Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. John Douillard, and welcome to the LifeSpa podcast, where we prove the ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda with modern science. And today, we're going to talk to two authors who wrote a real incredible book called Awakened Sleep, Dr. Suhas Kshirsagar and Dr. Sheila Patel. Both of them are acclaimed Ayurvedic practitioners. Both have worked deeply with Dr. Deepak Chopra over many, many years. Suhas is a prolific author in the Ayurvedic world, teaching Ayurvedic medicine for decades, 35 years plus. And Dr. Sheila Patel is a medical doctor who has been practicing Ayurveda, also worked with Deepak Chopra for many, many years. Really brilliant Ayurvedic practitioners that we have on today, talking about something called awakened sleep, which means not only the ability to get sleep, so you can actually sleep through the night, but actually to carry some level of self-awareness into your sleep. So instead of being knocked out, dragged out, and kind of dull during your sleep, you carry some level of self-awareness while you sleep. For example, if you meditate and you conk out during your meditation, which used to happen to me all the time, you're exhausted. The idea is meditation is being alert and resting at the same time. The same rules apply with sleep, to be resting, but having some level of self-awareness while you sleep. That is the ultimate goal of sleep, not just to get 8 hours, but to actually get 8 hours with a little hint of self-awareness. And that's the beauty of awakened sleep. They wrote this incredible book about how we can get the sleep in the first place, but also take it all the way to our full human potential. Well, it's really rare for me to sit down with two of the best Ayurvedic doctors in America. I'm really honored to have you guys. This book, Awakened Sleep, is amazing. I think it's going to be a staple as an Ayurvedic text for years and years to come. And I love the title, Awakened Sleep, and I'd love for you guys to kind of dissect those two words for me first, maybe, and talk about what is awakened, what does that mean, because people probably, some have some sense of it, but I'd love to kind of dive into what that means. And then we'll get into, all aspects of sleep and dive into that in great detail. So how would you guys define awakened?
Well, Sheila, can I take this?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, thank you, John. And I think this is the best way to start our conversation, I would say, because often sleep was considered as if something that you are disconnected, you are zoned out, you are in a deep state of slumber, and you are almost unconscious, where you are unaware of everything. But from Ayurvedic perspective, sleep is considered to be the gateway that is closest to elevating and tapping into higher states of awareness and consciousness. So using sleep as a gateway to enlightenment has always been a theme through Bhagavad Gita, through Upanishad, through all the literature itself. So instead of calling sleep as sleep where you're disconnected, we can use this as a way to tap into higher states of awareness and consciousness, where you are witnessing yourself fall asleep, where your mind and body are getting deep quality rest, but you are transcending to the fourth state of consciousness, where you are able to tap into the field of all possibilities. That is the reason, it's a pun intended here, that you are sleeping, your body is getting the rest, but you are awakened to a higher state of realization. And I think mystics, saints all around the world have always tapped into that element of sleep. And I think science is barely catching up to the stages and the mechanic of sleep. And I think the Vedic literature is way ahead of this in understanding the human potential, where you can transcend the illusion and Maya. This is the closest state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi that you can get to. And these are all Vedic quotes and references. That's the reason why we chose the title Awakened Sleep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sheila. So I want you to elaborate on that as well, but I'd like you to also describe what is the human potential, and when we talk about higher states of consciousness and enlightenment through sleep, which is obviously a really cool concept, I don't think a lot of people really have a real clear understanding of what that is, what you would experience in that sort of higher state of consciousness, enlightened state.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Suha said, and then you can continue. But what I love the title of this book, and what our goal was is to have people appreciate that sleep is really an extension of your meditation practice. So when if people meditate, we realize that when we meditate, we can tap into that pure awareness, consciousness, that highest potential that we have for everything, for creativity, for energy, for health, for focus, all of those things. And if there are all of those good outcomes that science is showing us that happen in meditation, sleep as an extension of meditation, we can access all of those potentials as well during that time. And our meditation practice is wonderful during the day, but all of those hours during sleep, we have the ability to also tap into that non-local dimension. And what I tell people is we want awakened sleep for enlightened days. So the quality of our sleep will dictate the quality of our day. And what we're bringing into our day are those qualities of consciousness: peace, joy, bliss, harmony, gratitude, empathy, all of those wonderful creativity, all of these qualities of consciousness we start to see in our day-to-day lives. So I think of it as an extension of our meditation practice. Yeah.
Let me add one interesting thing to this, John, that how many times in a day that you experience that none of your sensory faculty is active and your mind is not working and generating any thought. Does it ever happen during the day, ever? And this is the only time when your senses are completely withdrawn, when your mind, the vrittis of the mind have completely settled down and zeroed down completely. And that is the only state or the gateway that you can experience something which is non-local or which is beyond the confinement of the sensory faculties, because it's all information that you get. And that is the stage where you transcend the information that you receive from the senses. Yes, you can meditate during the day. You are hearing the sounds. You are still smelling things in the room. This is no way that you can transcend all your senses plus your mind at once. So the closest state that you can get to in sleep, and if you can convert that sleep hygiene and the time before you go to sleep into that state of awareness, then you can tap into that. And as we said earlier, that it's an effortless process. Everyone sleeps, is that right? Everyone sleeps and everybody wakes up next day. So if we are all sleeping, then why can't we really create that sleep hygiene, as Ayurveda talks it as Ratricharya? Dinacharya is important, but Ratricharya is even more important, because the Ratricharya will decide the quality of the day, and the quality of the day decides the quality of the night we'll have.
So explain to me what an experience would be in awakened sleep. Am I sleeping, but I'm aware of what? What happens in an awakened sleeping state? Am I dreaming and I'm aware of my dreaming? Am I lucid dreaming? Give me an example. Try to define that experience so we know what we're going for here with awakened sleep.
Well, again, means if you look from a simple creative perspective, so many inventions and discoveries happen in deep sleep, and a state where the mind is exhausted, the senses are exhausted, they are tired of all the computations and all the things that they are trying to do. So when you withdraw that, you suddenly get to a quantum leap, to an aha moment, that you suddenly see things that you usually don't see. You can feel things that you usually don't feel. You leave the edges and the boundaries and the physical structure of the body behind, where you are experiencing things from a creative perspective, and that is still very objective from our perspective. Okay, so you are still finding a solution to the problem that is bugging you at that time when your mind and senses are not active. So that is one part of the creative energy. So the illusion of life, the Maya, means the sleep is given the nature of a goddess called as Nidra Devi. So this goddess casts her spell And that spell allows you to actually see what you're experiencing. And that spell disappears in the night, and you are able to actually feel things and sense some things, as the body is not what you are physically, but you are able to actually experience anything and everything. You are able to see sun, moon, stars, galaxies, many things that we experience during siddhis. Is that right? In siddhis, when you're experiencing, you're using certain mantras and everything, you're experiencing realms that are often inconceivable through your sensory faculties. So at that time, you're able to see that. And there are documentations around the globe that people have experienced out-of-body experiences at that time, where you're non-local, you're able to travel, you are able to meet anyone, you are able to talk to anyone. There is no boundaries of space and time at that time, which often constricts our daytime experience.
I'll add just that what I often tell people is the same thing I tell them when I teach meditation is many experiences can happen, and some of it may be dependent on people's individual nature and et cetera. But just to again, with meditation, we might experience more synchronicities in our lives. In our day-to-day lives is where we notice most of the changes because we're coming from a higher sort of level of awareness in all of our daily things. So some people may begin to have more lucid dreaming, begin to become aware even when they're in deep sleep. Just like, in meditation, people can experience various things, images, different planes of, in the auric fields, but that's not necessarily the goal. They're just experiences that can happen. But what people will start to experience is the shift in their day-to-day lives. That, again, that creativity, that different perspectives that they can see all of a sudden that they couldn't see before. Again, better health and all of the things that science is showing us that happens when we get proper sleep, proper natural sleep. We start to see those effects in our day-to-day lives. So many things can be experienced while we're sleeping. And if there are certain experiences people have a desire to have, you can set some intentions before bed. I want to wake up in my dreams, and that can be something that happens, but it doesn't have to be. So I always tell people, let go of expectation, allow whatever you experience to be experienced, but notice the changes in your life.
Yeah, no, I love that. Let go of the expectations, because the more you try to think about it, the less successful we're going to be
Right.
when we're trying to not think and begin to understand how to feel and experience something that is not based on thinking, right?
Right.
When I was studying in Ayurveda in India, I was asked to write a thesis on Dhanurveda, where the warriors of ancient times were said to be, awake when they sleep, where they would never be vulnerable to a surprise attack. They'd be sleeping and resting, but had some level of awareness that they could never be surprised. And that was sort of that kind of Dhanurveda, which, kind of means establish being and then perform action, where you find that deep level of silence where you're resting, but there's also the coexistence of opposites, which is I'm in that deep state of silence, but I'm also maintaining some level of self-awareness where I can never be sort of surprised, And I think that's why I love the topic and the title. I love it. It's something that I've thought about for years and years, and still haven't mastered it, by the way. Still working on that. But I think that's the beautiful part of what you're providing is something that gives, a journey in your sleep where it's not just, a lot of people just want to go to sleep and wake up and not wake up in the middle of the night. That would be probably goal number one for the vast majority of folks. But then there's also, in Ayurveda, this unlimited potential of human potential that we have. And we're talking about refining this human instrument to be self-aware all the time, right? And that's such a beautiful concept that you guys bring forward. And I really love it. So I want to kind of drill into this a little bit more. So we're going to dream. People dream. Some people remember their dreams. Some people don't remember their dreams. remembering your dream a level of self-awareness? And is that like a first step to be able to sort of capture the memory of your dream into the reality? Like, how does that work? Where does dreaming fit in? And is it a tool to take that step towards this kind of more enhanced level of self-awareness?
Well, we'll have to define what actually dream is. What you and me are experiencing right now, is this a dream? Because from a yogic Vedic perspective, that the Maya of life, what we experience, what we see, is 100% not real, because it's just a perceptive reality. Everything, every experience that we have right now is not real. And if this is not real, then when we are completely deeply asleep, what we experience, is that real? So the age-old understanding is what we call it as dreamscape in the night. Well, whether that you are experiencing is the reality, or this is what is reality. There is, fortunately, there's no right and wrong about what is a good dream, what is a bad dream, what is a right dream, what is a wrong dream, whether you should remember your dream or you should forget your dream. That is an experience. That is an experience in consciousness, as every experience is in consciousness, including the dream. Is that right? That every experience that you have is in consciousness itself. So what you're experiencing is at the backdrop of consciousness all the time, whether you're awake or you're sleeping or you're dreaming. So even dream, many times, and Ayurveda is probably the only science that I know has elaborately described the types of dreams, and they have a whole treatise based on Swapna Samhita, which talks about only decoding dreams and understanding of dreams itself. So some of them are tinted with doshas, some of them are tinted with your thoughts and emotions, what is happening during the day and things like that. So that experience is transcended there. And within that experience, there's a sudden lightning dream that happens, which has nothing to do with your daytime activity, that suddenly kind of wakes you up and gives you an impression that you will remember the next day. It can be prophetic, it can be anything. And as I said, that in the Bible, we talk about the dream. In the Buddhism, Gautam Buddha's mother had a dream that this prince is not going to stay here and is going to become a monk, wandering monk as such. So these are dreams that suddenly allow you and give you the total dissolution of space and time, that gives you an experience that might happen in years or decades to come, or that might have happened decades ago that you didn't see at that time, and now you see clearly. So those are all depending within the states of your consciousness itself. So I think dreaming is a good state of a healthy sleep as such. And that is the reason why we say when we sleep naturally, without under the influence of anything in terms of drug, pharmaceutical, cannabis, CBD, things like that, when you sleep without the influence of that, that is the closest reality that you can transcend your senses and what you're feeling, that you can believe and tap into your dreams, I would say.
One thing I found really interesting about dreams when I started studying Ayurveda is, because if people know the doshas, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, I'm a Kapha, so more of that earth and water, and naturally we have more deep sleep. Versus a Vata that has naturally more light sleep because they're air and space. And so I typically never did remember my dreams very well. And that is a sort of a typical thing with Kaphas because, and just tying in a little bit of the science here, typically we go through different stages of sleep. And when we're dreaming, and which, we sort of classify as REM sleep, then you may enter some your light sleep, dream sleep, and then we all wake up a little bit in the middle of the night and typically go right back to sleep. Some people don't. But when we wake up while we're dreaming and we go into a little more waking state, then you're more likely to remember. So as kaphas typically have good deep sleep, they may not wake up right after a dream or while they're dreaming. So it's not unusual because some people think, am I not dreaming? Is that not good? But we know if we strap, wires on people, everybody's going through all of these stages. And so, yes, in fact, you're dreaming still. And so you're getting the benefits of the dream state, which is emotional regulation and emotional processing. So our our mind is going through emotional processing during dream state, whether you remember them or not. But my daughter, who's a Vata type, describes very vivid dreams that she has every night, and so we can all be different in that way.
Beautiful. So, Suhas, I want to go back for a minute because you mentioned something a minute ago that, everything that we experience now is not real, that this is an illusion, this is Maya. I think for our listeners, we kind of need to unwrap that a little bit. What does that mean? Like when people are like, now I'm like, this reality is not real. So if I was awakened, then what would my reality be? How would that work for someone? I think people need to understand this because I think it's confusing for folks. It's not just about being joyful and being happy, which is great, but you're taking it another level where I'm actually aware of the fact that this is not real. Is that what's happening here?
Well, from even a different perspective, that when we say 100% what we experience of the world is not real, it's an age-old Vedic statement, okay? Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. This is from Shankaracharya, okay? So Brahman, the consciousness is alone, the only truth, and every other experience is not real, mithya. And the English word myth actually comes from the original Sanskrit word mithya, which is unreal. And that unreality is very species specific. It is based upon the set of senses that you are blessed with or cursed with. What you experience is through the world, through the lens of the senses that is given to you. A snake would experience differently, a lizard would experience differently, a fish in the water would experience the world differently. Every species with their set of experiences experience the world differently. And at a quantum mechanical level, we know something which is hard, which is not actually hard. It is hollow, dense, it is open. There is spaces everywhere else. The reality of the nature is not what we experience at all as it is. And so if that is real, then we allow our physiology to be dictated by this experience all day long on a roller coaster of waves and emotions, which constantly goes up and down because of the nature of the experience that we feel in our environment. So an awakened sage, an awakened person, an enlightened person would actually minimize that impact, where he is not overly happy with excitement, something good happening to them, or not completely sad or depressed by something bad happening to them, because they know these are passing cloud. None of this is real. Okay, so the first step of an awakened soul is minimize the impact, what it does to them. It creates a sthita pragya. It creates an equanimity and stability within their own nervous system and the physiology. They go through the life without getting affected by the look of it as such. That doesn't mean that they are not thirsty or hungry or sleepy or anything like that, but it minimizes the intensity and the affliction of everything that affects their mind and body itself. So that is the first step. The second step is you allow the things to happen in the moment without trying to think a lot about the future or in the past as such. So they try to experience things as they are at that moment. And I think this is number one problem for insomnia in the world. Fear of falling asleep, fear of being alone, somniphobia, fear of darkness, death, mortality, being lonely is number one reason for insomnia in the world, globally. We can talk about our daytime activity, lack of sunlight, this and that, so many things, but this is the real crux of the issue. So when an immortal self who is letting themselves feel so confined, so tiny, so isolated, so fearful of everything, which create this experience, and because of that, it starts affecting their life negatively. So the whole pandemic or the global situation that we have with mental health is related with sleep. And it's high time. It's about time for the science to realize, means how many years you have been realizing or talking about the importance of sleep. And I think science is barely catching up that it is much more than just sleeping. It is much more than just giving rest to the body. It is something that is every living creature is blessed with, and there is a reason for that. And there is no way that we can even decode the mystical experience. You were talking about dreams. So you can connect people to EEGs and look at their electrical activities in the brain. But can you guess what are they dreaming at that time? Nobody can. Nobody can. There is no equipment that you can connect to the brain and tell me what you're dreaming at that time, whether you can tell me that they are in this sleep or that sleep phase as such. So where does that come from? Where does the experience happens? Where does even memory come into your recall when you're trying to do something? They are all structured and stored in consciousness itself. So those are the experiences, and you are able to tap into that field where you are able to catalog, regulate, optimize, improve your cognitive behavior. And the science is fairly catching up what Ayurveda has been talking about thousands of years ago. Means it sounds so poetic when Ayurveda describes in Charak Samhita that nidrayatam sukham dukkham pushti karsha balabalam brishata klibata jnanam ajnanam jivitim nacha. So knowledge, ignorance, health, corpulence, vitality, strength, potency, tonification, happiness, unhappiness, memory, recall, everything depends upon your sleep. And the quality of sleep will decide the quality of the function of the entire biochemistry and the neurochemistry of your system itself. We know that the immunity, the gut function, everything. When Ayurveda says that sleep is Trayopastambha, the tripod of life, as the cornerstone of well-being, you're talking about Ahar, Nidra, Brahmacharya. This is the tripod. And Brahmacharya doesn't only mean celibacy, it means a consciousness-based lifestyle. Brahmam acharati yasa brahmacharya. So understanding Brahman, understanding consciousness, and infusing a consciousness-based diet and lifestyle is the very basis of it. So I think Ayurveda is giving a beautiful subjective experience of an ideal daily routine, ideal nightly routine, and there is this poetic similarities that is given in Vedic literature as the two sisters, as they call them, Usha and Nisha. Usha is dawn and Nisha is dusk. These are two sisters, they don't meet each other ever. So when the dawn comes, the dusk goes away, and when dusk sets in, the dawn goes away. So this polarities of sun and moon, the light decides the quality of the night, serotonin deciding the quality of melatonin, the exposure of sunlight depending the quality of the moonlight itself. And those qualities, moon is the significator of the mind, according to Vedic astrology, according to every belief system that we talk about. So I think those parallels that we have been talking about are not only poetic anymore, they are hardcore scientific facts, if it makes sense.
Beautiful. Sheila?
Oh, yeah, I love it when Suhas speaks because it's always so rich and, and you want to sit with it for a while. But yeah, I mean, I think he was explaining in the beginning the reality and that what we experience is really limited by our senses, as a species. And so there's so many, we can say it's an illusion because there's so many realities that if our sensory, faculties were different, we would experience a very different world. And so, when you just simply think about it that way, you have to accept that what we experience is somewhat illusory because it's, there are many different realities that can be experienced by all these different, neural systems of different species. So we do say our reality is species specific. So is that real? In some ways you could say, no, it's not because it's, or you could, some people may be more comfortable say it's a partial reality or it's some level of reality when we're in a waking state. But the beauty of the Vedic literature and the Vedic knowledge is that there are different states of awareness. And so waking state is only one level of awareness that we can have, and the most constricted, as Suhas mentioned. So when we have deep sleep, dream sleep, and then ultimately turiya, or sort of merging with with oneness, enlightenment, or many terms for that, but they're all different levels of awareness that we can experience as humans, and we constrict ourselves by this somewhat illusory or partial reality of the waking state.
And John, you have worked with His Holiness Maharshi Mahesh Yogi for many years, and you remember him holding the flower very fondly, touching it, caressing it, and telling everyone that the colorful rose that I'm holding in my hand, these are petals, these are green leaves, these are little thorns, but there's the same sap that is flowing through the entire stem of this flower. And the same sap projects itself as colorful petals, or the sharp thorns, or the green leaves, or the tender green stem. It's just the projection of the same unified field that projects itself into diversity. And that's what we catch. And we look at it as 3 or 4 different things. That is Maya. That is Maya. That is the illusion, where we get ourselves entangled into the diversity of everything and forget the unity state of consciousness.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I think that it sounds like what you're saying is that we should be engaged. We should be able, with a refined nervous system that can perceive the subtle better, we can be aware of the fact that, like you said, this is a movie, this is an illusion, it's a projection. And if you could just have some level of awareness that you're engaged in watching the movie, that you're not just only looking at the screen and you're going up and down with all the craziness on the screen, you're actually aware of the fact that this is actually a movie. I think people can do that when they're watching TV. They can just sit there and go, I'm so engrossed, and you start talking to the TV like it's real, And when you start to sit back and go, wait a minute, that's not real. And I'm actually watching this movie. I'm an observer of this whole process. Then you take it to your real life and you go, I'm also the observer of the life that I live, the stress that goes up, the stress that goes down, the weather that changes. I'm observing that as opposed to being that. And I think that's sort of maybe, I don't know, a great way for people to sort of have some framework of what we're trying to do. I know I practice when I wake up in the morning every day. I always go outside and meditate, and I try to entrain my own inner silence with the silence around me. And in the morning, when it's so peaceful, it's like you can cut it with a knife. And I try to blur the boundaries between the silence, the non-thinking state inside of me, with that presence around me. And then you begin to become aware of the fact that you can observe that presence, that silent presence around you. And that silent presence around you is consciousness. That's the intelligent, creative field that is that we can have some sense of awareness. And what you're saying is that when you go to sleep, you want to carry that awareness with you into that sleep. So that's what I want to talk about next, is how do we take that sort of entrainment of your inner silence with the silence you're to get in deep sleep and sort of merge those two. How do you set yourself up for that in the preparation for sleep, so you go into that sort of awakened sleep?
Well, this is very well put, John. Beautiful, very well said. Because what we know about sleep so far is the absence of awareness. And what awakened sleep is telling people or teaching or preparing people for the awareness of the absence. Okay. Sleep, we are still stuck at absence of awareness. That's what the modern science says. But we are allowing people to experience the absence of awareness. And it's very easily done when you are in a natural setting at times, as you said. when you're out in the nature, you don't complain, you don't whine. Is that right? It should be few degrees here or there. Let me adjust the thermostat. Maybe I would like to have a cloud over here, not there. You don't do that. You accept things as they are and experience it, learn it, enjoy, and grow with it. Is that right? So it is easy to do in a natural setting. Then the human drama of life that we constantly go through, yum and yuck of everything, and allows the body with constant fluctuations of more and more vrittis creating destabilization. So one of the preparations for a good quality sleep, and that's the question that you asked, that how do we prepare that? Number one is we should all look forward to going to sleep every night as our tonic, as our rejuvenation. Sleep is given Nidra Devi as if you're going to the womb of creation one more time, as if you're going back to your mother, getting nurtured and nourished every night. Again, very poetic, but absolutely true. 100% scientific fact that you are totally nurtured. If sleep was a drug, it would be a miracle $1 trillion drug, what it does to you. So it's one of the most potent anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory activity one will ever do in their lifetime. So you should look forward to go to sleep. You should actually minimize any unwanted thoughts or anxieties that are happening immediately before go to sleep. So stop working at least a couple of hours before you start preparing for the sleep itself. Make sure that you're not exposed to blue light, watching anything, because many people, what you watch in the night, what the experience that you will have right before you go to sleep will haunt and throughout the night itself. So be watchful and mindful. So what are the things that you're watching or experiencing, conversations, social media, texting. So get that clutter out of your system itself. Instead of that, replace with something better. Focus with your meditation, giving yourself an abhyanga in the evening, taking a nice hot shower, preparing for simple chants, maybe a gentle meditation, maybe a simple yoga nidra technique practice that we have described in the book. We have given numerous techniques in the book itself. How do you prepare yourself? Recapitulation, sensory slowing down and withdrawal as such, and slowly preparing for sleep with a gratitude. Instead of feeling fearful, you feel positive, optimistic, happy, good outlook about your life. You dispel that fear. You go to sleep. If you wake up, what you do, we have mentioned in the book as well. So you cultivate and change that experience throughout the night. And it's a repetitive habit. As you start doing it, and we challenge everyone, all the readers also, and we challenged ourselves earlier, that try doing it for 7 days. Do it for 14 days, 21 days, and very soon you will notice what it does to the quality and the quantity of your sleep. Means you have seen numerous studies, what happened with the subtle changes in your daytime activity, how it affects your sleep. So I think what we are trying to say is this 1 hour, what you do before you sleep, will not only decide the quality of your sleep, but the choices, the decisions, the kind of relationship that you will attract for the rest of your life will be decided because of that.
So what I usually explain to people, as Dr. Suhas was mentioning, we list many practices in the book, because one thing I always really want people to decide and choose what practice resonates with them, which one they're drawn to. Because if you're trying to do something that doesn't really feel natural to you, you're not going to keep doing it. So we have some heart-based meditations. We do a sensory withdrawal practice that you can do before bed, body scan, etc. Because what all of these practices do, journaling, we have a little journaling practice that we recommend to dump, pick the weeds. We say, dump all of the thoughts that are roiling around in your mind, set a few intentions. So you're planting a few seeds, and then close it with gratitude, because then you're watering those seeds of gratitude with gratitude, and you're going to bed with that state of gratitude. But many, many different practices, really what they're all doing is inducing that relaxation response in the body, because that's what we need, that rest and digest, that parasympathetic tone. So it could be a breathing practice before bed. That's one of my favorites. And you can do many of the practices, and then as you're laying there, instead of going into your thoughts, you just focus on your breath, do some slow rhythmic breathing, and you gently drift off to sleep. Even if it takes a little while, you are at least in a state of relaxation, that parasympathetic tone, because that's what we need to really get good, deep, natural sleep, as opposed to sympathetic over arousal and we're exhausted and we fall asleep, but internally we're still in a little bit of fight or flight. So we're not really getting all the healing potential that we can through our sleep. So really any practice that calms the nervous system. And so we dedicate a whole chapter in the book on the senses, because I don't think a lot of people realize how much sensory overload can activate the nervous system. It keeps us in a little bit of sympathetic, over arousal. And so, yes, all day long, paying attention to sensory, what's coming in through your senses, but especially that hour or two before bed. Again, what are we doing? What practices are we doing to calm that nervous system so that we can actually go to sleep? And even again, what's that last thought? Yes, we have thoughts. But we can choose, what are the thoughts that I want to bring my attention to? It could be a mantra. So we do discuss several mantras in the book, and then you can just bring your awareness to that. And I'll give a simple example. Just my dad lives with me. He's 89, and he in the evening he likes to. We've started watching these YouTube videos where they're bhajans, like Indian hymns and Sanskrit chants. So we play that in the evening, sometimes for a couple of hours. And I noticed after we started doing that, I would wake up if I do kind of wake up in the middle of the night a little bit, they're resonating in my mind, like that's what's there. And I thought that was a beautiful thing because, as we said, what's in your environment? What are you giving your senses right before you go to sleep? That's exactly what will be there during the night. Yeah.
Oh, I love that, Sheila. Yeah, go ahead.
And these are all neuroassociative patterns of habits that you need to cultivate. And we have also mentioned something like if you have a little oil blend with peppermint oil, lavender, rosemary, whatever you want to do that, and just sniff it a few times before you go to sleep. And it becomes a habit. Every time you sniff, you crash and you go to sleep. You take it with you in a hotel room, you're traveling. It's a habit that you have ingrained, that I sniff this last thing in the night and then I go to sleep. And that habit trains your mind to get into that habit, the old Pavlov experiment with the dog, that this is what I do right before I go to bed, whether I do a regular prayer or I say gratitude meditation or I do this sniffing or I do some kind of a yoga nidra, or you create a habit and we create a habitual response in our body as the neuroassociative training in which the physiology responds to that.
That reminds me of the study with rabbits where they gave the rabbit a smell of peppermint, and then they poked him with a needle, and every time in short order the rabbit became, all you had to do is smell the peppermint oil and they would freak out because they got poked with a needle. And then the rabbit had babies, and then their babies would have a kind of a traumatic reaction to the smell of peppermint. So like you said, we can train the brain, and that will even pass on to our children. You can have that cultural, way of supporting deep sleep, because we actually do pass that on through that kind of vertical, transfer of genetic material. Anyway, I thought that's really
And the other thing, just to add one more thing, it sounds very subtle, but if you imagine how many genetic pathways that it regulates by just that little experience, you would be amazed how many genes can get turned on because of that. And all these subtle healing therapies that Ayurveda has been talking about for ages together have far-reaching implication on your gene expression.
Yeah, it makes sense, because the studies show that when you actually sense, particularly while you're sleeping, that activates the emotional cortex, which is your memory of emotions and trauma. And studies show that when you actually have different senses at night, you exercise that emotional cortex. It is one study showed that increases for people who had dementia, it increases their cognitive function by 235% just by smelling something before you go to bed. I actually have an aromatherapy that I have next to my bed, and every night I put a different oil in there to smell it, to give my brain a different sense, to keep that flexibility and the ability to smell and sense. And even if it's lemon, which wouldn't necessarily be good for sleep, I still sleep great. But it creates a different quality of sleep as well, which is kind of cool. I love what you're saying, and I've written some articles about that science. It's pretty cool. The other thing is, what I love to do and ask you guys about is, I always tell my patients that, there's studies that show that when you go to sleep, during light sleep, you do this sort of daily review of everything that went on during the day. Your brain goes through the thing I did, and this wouldn't go very well, and I was stressed out about this. And you go through that review, and the more stimulus you have during the day, the more you have to go through the review, the more difficult it is to get through all that and get into deep sleep, where that deep rejuvenative sleep happens. Where if you meditate before, you all know when you meditate, we oftentimes spend our time in the beginning of a meditation thinking about this and this and going through the stress of the day. You kind of de-stress all those thoughts. But if you just sit up and meditate or do yoga nidra, like you said, you can kind of get rid of all that self daily review before you even go into sleep, and then drop into deep sleep a little bit faster. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
It's
actually,
the same recapitulation. Sheila, go ahead.
yeah, that's what I was going to mention. One of the other things we talk about is before bed, you can just kind of do a brain dump, but another great practice to do is what's called recapitulation, where you, as the observer, as you mentioned, like you're a camera just watching your day, like video, no audio, because you don't necessarily want to get drawn into all the drama of the day, but you're observing your day and you can write it down, woke up, had this for breakfast, and then went on to work, drove here, talked to this person, but you kind of recap or recapitulate your day. And you can do it just mentally or you can write it down, but that's the idea is and then it only takes a few minutes, if you're just doing it kind of as the observer of your day. And then at the end you say, I'm letting that go. So you intentionally say, I'm letting that go. So that again gets your brain a little bit less activated, so that you're not taking that day into the night, or you may be processing more deeply because you've kind of let go of the superficial aspects of your day. So recapitulation is a great thing to do before bed as well.
And the other thing, the reason for this exercise is you clear the weeds. That's the term that we use in the book. Is that right? It's an overgrown activity, and you clear the weeds with everything that you're watching, paying attention, clearing the clutter, decluttering your mind, and then you plant the seeds. You want to clear the weeds and then plant the seeds. And plant the seeds objectively enough, what you want to manifest, what you want to sprout up in your life. That I'd like to have a joyful and energetic body. I would like to have a clear perceptive mind. I would like to manifest a healthy, loving companionship or relationship. Or I would like to improve my relationship with this person or that person, or whatever it is. So once the weeds are clear and you put the seeds in the field of consciousness, it will sprout up, because that is the state from where the field of all possibilities, the things happen, which is a non-local communion where the person that you're having a strained relationship is experiencing that also, that you would like to improve this relationship. And it's very likely that this would happen because of the thoughts, because of the release of the sensory confinement. You are having a connective network of everything through which you are going through ceaselessly. And many times it happens that we dissolve our ego, which is the biggest force that blocks our energy. That ego encapsulated mind and body that we carry painfully throughout the day is effortlessly dissolving at that time in the night. And you allowing it to dissolve and then transcend into something bigger, better, greater than yourself is the giant step towards spirituality and enlightenment. And nobody has time to do 1 hour, 2 hour meditation every day, but everybody has time to go to sleep. And so if you mindfully convert that 30 minutes, 1 hour experience before you sleep, it will slowly shift and change everything that you manifest in your life.
Boy, it really makes you think twice about what you expose yourself to before you go to sleep. I mean, most people are probably watching a movie, or the news. Yeah. None of those are good for sleep, really. I can't even imagine watching a scary movie. What do they call them? Thrillers, whatever. I can't watch them, but people do. And then I can't imagine, what your sleep would be like if you just got completely like stressed out by your blood pressure is rising because of this traumatic movie, people are shooting each other. It's crazy what people do in our culture. And then we try to, and then we, before we go to sleep, we get on our phone, watch, slip through, do a little quick social media scroll in front of a blue light. And then we try to have deep sleep. It doesn't make really any sense at all. I mean, it's just, and we know, right? The research is so clear about how important sleep is for your overall health. It's just really crazy. So I want to, my last question is about, there's research shows that we need energy to sleep, right? That most people who can't sleep is not because they have too much energy and they can't settle down. It's because they have too little and they're exhausted. And you need energy to sedate the nervous system. In fact, there was a study done that showed that right before you go to sleep, there's a surge of ATP, which is your energy that your mitochondria produce, which is adenosine triphosphate. So right before you go to sleep, if you're healthy, you get a surge of this ATP, which breaks down into 3-phosphate and adenosine. And we all know that adenosine is a natural sedative. Caffeine blocks the adenosine receptors. So it doesn't let you relax and sedate yourself. That's why if you drink a cup of coffee before you go to bed, you're not going to sleep because you block the ability for that adenosine to sedate the nervous system into deep sleep. So the point here is that what Ayurveda would say for thousands of years is that we don't want to sedate you to go to sleep because you're already sedated, you're already exhausted. What we need to do is give you deep rejuvenation, which gets completely mistranslated into give me a stimulant to stimulate me because I have no energy. That's completely different than what Ayurveda is saying. Deep rejuvenation, adaptogenic support, getting the sun in the morning has been shown that you produce more melatonin at night. Those kind of things to get you the energy you need, like your daily routine, your dinacharya, that would be the key and what you expose yourself to rebuild the nervous system so you have that energy to naturally sedate yourself to go to sleep. So what are some of the top tools people can do to pay off the exhaustive debt from watching all the scary movies and being stressed out by the news? What are some of the top things people can do to rebuild their nervous system so they have the ability to sedate themselves into a natural state of deep sleep?
Well, if the illusion of life is not enough, then you add illusion 2.0 by watching a horror movie or watching 10 p.m. news or something like that. That takes it to the next level, which is also creating problems. So you start believing and thinking something which is totally unreal, like a film, and take that film with you all night long. So that is problematic. But going back to your question, energy is a very interesting question. Sleep is the creative energy that we talk about. Another word for sleep in Durga Saptashati, as we describe this as the creative energy, Prakriti, which is the energy that we're talking about. So doing your evening oil massage energizes you. Is that right? It relaxes you, but energizes you. Doing a warm shower in the evening, or maybe a gentle cooler shower in the evening, energizes you naturally without any artificial things. Having adaptogenic herbs that you talk about. And it's very interesting. These herbs are so smart and so intelligent. Like when you look at ashwagandha, the Latin name, and ashwagandha, everybody uses that for having more energy, having greater vitality as an anabolic steroid. But the Latin name is Videnia somnifera. That helps you sleep better. Is that right? So the adaptogenic herbs calm your nervous system, but still gives you enough energy to actually train yourself for sleeping. Same with Brahmi, same with Tulsi, same with Ashwagandha. So these are adaptogenic herbs. Same with diet. You don't want your diet to be influencing your sleep at all. So you want to make sure that you are done eating at least a couple of hours before you go to sleep. If you are going to sleep with a heavy meal sitting in your belly, it's going to create this fatigue and exhaustion and dullness and heaviness even further. So you want to make sure that you are digested about 70-80% of your food before you go to sleep. And you want to give a little nudge by giving a golden milk or a turmeric milk or saffron milk or something like that to give you the energy that adds the quality of the sleep. It has to be sattvic. And again, to add this term to people that do not know about sattva is something which is more uplifting, light and pure and giving more clarity. So you want to add things which are creating that experience which is sattvic. So you are reading a book or reading a magazine or studying something that is more uplifting your mind, creating more positive thoughts and ideas and things like that, listening to certain chants or things like that. Those are all things that change the tamasic nature of that evening to a sattvic nature, which gives you the light, bright energy, which allows you to fall asleep and stay asleep. Sheila, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add, as you had mentioned, that kind of exhaustion and having no energy, like even in sleep science, if people say, "Oh, I fall asleep," the second my head hits the pillow, that can be a sign of exhaustion. That they actually see normal latency is it takes a few minutes because that means, you have no energy. You're basically again in stress mode, sympathetic, overdrive. So, and that's like how a lot of people live their day is just kind of not being very active and tying it back into what you mentioned with the adenosine. And we talk about in the book having some level of movement in your day because as we have activity, we create adenosine, and so that builds up. And then so that we have a nice level of being tired by the end of the day. So some sort of movement in your day is really important to create that energy that then will help you fall asleep at night. So a lot of times I tell people just again, a little bit of movement. It could be gentle stretching in the evening. It could be a walk, after dinner. But that also kind of, again, is, and gives you energy and it's a little activating, but just enough to help you fall asleep. No vigorous activity, right? You don't want to go to the gym at 9 o'clock at night and then try to go to sleep because that's too much activity, but a little bit of movement. And we know from sort of the trauma research, sometimes people doing physical activity because they're so, their nervous system is so overactivated can actually trigger pain and other things. So I just tell them gentle stretching, but some sort of movement. You need to move. And even I consider movement of the breath. So it could be just, again, doing some sort of breathing practice in the evening to turn off. I tell people it's like turning off your lights, or turning off the switch on your car. We drive our car into the garage and we turn it off. We don't leave it running all night long. Or the lights, we go into the room and we turn the lights off. And because we are activated all day long, if we don't do something to kind of turn our internal lights off, some deep breathing, some gentle stretching, then again, same thing, we're not getting into these stages of sleep that we need to. We're a little activated as we go into the night. So simple things, a little bit of movement in the evening. And again, and then that gets that energy kind of moving, but just enough to help us go to sleep, and then moving the breath. So doing a little bit of slow rhythmic breath work. I think those are simple practices that everybody can do, to cultivate good sleep.
And you have been teaching people meditation. So often when people start meditating and they fall asleep, we often tell them that you're exhausted. That's why as soon as you start meditating, you fall asleep. So you want to dispel that thing and give them the energy so that they don't fall asleep during the meditation. Same with sleep also. Same with sleep also. So you need to give them a little energy so that they don't zone out immediately. So as Sheila said, some breathing exercises create that energy that is needed. Open the flow of prana. You need the flow of prana. Prana is the subdosha which regulates your sleep. That is the number one dosha that regulates the sleep. Is the force of life that regulates and uplifts the sensory regulation and modulation that helps you sleep better. Another key component is mantra, because we use the mantra in the meditation to slow down our thought process. Is that right? It distracts us from our thoughts. It allows us to get into the gaps. Exactly what we need at that time. Because as soon as you close your eyes, you're surrounded with so many thoughts, good and bad. So you use your mantra, whether you sit up or you do lying down, and slowly you will slip into the gap and go to the sleep that you are going to. And trust me, that mantra will haunt you all night long, because as you wake up, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, you start repeating the mantra, you go back to sleep. You wake up at 3 o'clock, you have to use restroom, you go back to sleep. start saying the mantra, you'll go back to sleep. You create a habitual conditioning as you have trained yourself during the meditation. You're doing exactly the same. And every time you do, it creates a sattvic sleep. It doesn't create a tamasic, dull, heavy, inertia quality sleep where the body gets the rest and the mind is enlightened and uplifted all the time.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, the more reasons why we should meditate before we go to bed and carry that vibration into sleep. You also said something that's very dear to my heart. You said that if you fall asleep during your meditation, then your meditation is not going to be really successful. And if you fall asleep, like knocked out, dragged out, dull in your sleep, you're going to not have that real optimal benefits of sleep. You know, that's how I got into Ayurveda. I went for my first Ayurveda consultation many, many years ago. Well, it was a lecture back in the early 1980s. And I went up to the Ayurvedic doctor after, and I said, I was training for an Ironman triathlon. And I said, is it okay to do an Ironman with Ayurveda and yoga? And he said, what is that? And I told him what it was, and this ridiculous amount of running and swimming and biking. And he looked at me and he said, why do you do that? And I was like, well, no one ever asked me that before. So I acted sort of like an idiot. And he just kind of shook his head and he said, do you meditate? And I was like, yes, I do meditate. Thank God, you know. And he said, do you sleep while you meditate? I was like, deeply. I get this like really deep sleep. It's knocked out. And again, he looked at me like I was an idiot and said, you're exhausted, you know, from all this exercise. Meditation is being restful and alert at the same time. You're conked out, completely exhausted, way too much exercise for you. And then I said, well, what if I were able to do all this exercise and not fall asleep in my meditation? Would that work? And he was like, yes, yes, you can go. And that was it. That was my marching orders, you know. So I started going to meditation retreats on the weekend, like once a month. And I went for a 2-week meditation retreat. Yoga, breathe, meditate, yoga, breathe, meditate. No running allowed, no exercise allowed, you know. And I came out of that and I went into a 3-month experience of the runner's high zone where I was competing at a high level. Most of my friends thought I was on steroids. Some of them learned to meditate because I was competing in the South Bay and triathlons where it was like really beginning to take off. But in my clinical internship at that time, I also had this level of bandwidth of academic capacity that I never experienced before. I could take on anything. I wish I had that in the early part of my training, you know. And that's what got me hooked into Ayurveda. I was like, what is that? That incredible ability to be, I call it the eye of the storm. The bigger the calm you create in sleep, the bigger the calm you create in your day, the more powerful your winds, the more productive you are. It's the coexistence of opposites, what you guys are talking about, which is why this book, Awake and Sleep, is so cool, because it really gives you, you know, the roadmap to be able to get to that bigger eye of the storm while you're sleeping. Because like you said, you're in there for 8 hours doing nothing. This is an incredible waste of opportunity. And you guys are bringing, you know, the reasons, the tools to actually make that incredibly productive. So we are talking to the authors, Dr. Sheila Patel and Dr. Suhas Kshirsagar, wrote this incredible book. Thank you guys. I'm sure this book is available everywhere, Amazon, everywhere you can get it, everywhere. Please, your last thoughts, both of you. Tell me what we haven't talked about, and thank you guys for being here.
Well, thank you, John, and I greatly appreciate your service for blending ancient wisdom of Ayurveda with the cutting-edge science, and I salute you. I watch everything that you do very, very fondly, and it's always music to my ears. And I think I wish you a great success in continuing this mission of your life. And from our side, we continue to do the same. Awake and Sleep is an Ayurvedic consciousness-based approach to unlocking deep quality rest and, more importantly, improving the physiological functioning, but more importantly, getting close to your self-realization.
Beautiful.
Yeah, just wanted to thank you for having us on, and it's been such an honor, you know, to write this book with Dr. Suhas, who's my mentor, and and colleague and friend. And really, it's about bringing Ayurveda, as you do, John, to the world, because there's so much wisdom there. It's I awakened sleep, and there are many practices for sleep, but it's also a subtle way of creating an Ayurvedic lifestyle during the day as well. We talk about that because it's so important, every aspect of your life, to bring in these deep Ayurvedic principles for physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And that really is why we're here, to realize our potential and be able to bring that to the world. And so we need all of this Ayurvedic knowledge to help us with that. So yeah.
There's one request that I would like to invite, a beautiful 4-part webinar series that myself and Dr. Sheila Patel are teaching starting from tomorrow. It's a course, 4-part webinar series on awakened sleep. And you can go to our website, awakensleep.com, or you can go to ayurvedichealing.net, find out more about it, and please join us if you can. The live webinars will be there, and they will always be recorded and uploaded to a secure website where you can go back and watch it over and over again, with a lot of information, handout, research papers, and the slides that we are going to share. So it starts tomorrow at 12 noon, if you can join us for a webinar course on awakened sleep.
You guys, thank you so much for the work you're doing. I really think sleep is such a big deal and so critical. And I think this is a really timely book. I wish you the greatest success. And I love both of you, what you guys are doing. I really feel it's an honor to have both of you on the show, and hope you guys come back and keep doing more of what you're doing. We really do need to bring this incredible wisdom to the mainstream. It's a work in progress, as Suhas, we know, we've been doing this for a very long time, and Sheila as well. And our work isn't done yet. We have a lot more to do to help bring this idea of consciousness into this crazy culture that we live in. All right, you guys. Hey, thank you so much. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. I just want to take a minute and tell you what we do here at LifeSpa.com. I've been in practice now for 40 years. 38 of them have been practicing Ayurvedic medicine full-time. For the last 20 years, I've been writing articles and doing videos on the ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda with the modern science. If something's been around for 1,000 years, still practiced today, and you have modern science to prove it, boy, I really feel like that's something we should all be taking a look at. And that's what we do at LifeSpa.com, and all that information is for free. So just go to LifeSpa.com and search in your health topic, and you'll get the information, the article that you need, hopefully that will help you. While you're there, check out our Ayurvedic store. You can get there through LifeSpa.com, or go to store.lifespa.com. And there we have all of our organic Ayurvedic herbs, organic skincare line, more books, tapes, knowledge that we give you is all there at our store. All of our cleansing kits are there in our store. All of our herbs are whole herbs with the natural occurring microbiome, the way it came out of the soil. And that's critically important, because if I took the bugs out of you, you'd be completely different. We take the bugs away from a plant, like sterilizing, making an extract, or spraying your food with pesticides, you lose significant benefit of that plant. And that's why we use the whole plant with the natural occurring microbiome. So check us out, learn more about what we're doing here at LifeSpa.com, and we'll see you again.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at LifeSpa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.